Look, man, I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm not going out there just thinking, okay, what new thing is there that we can talk about with the first overall pick and Shane Wright as well as Juraj Slafkovsky? What new conversation is there? I don't look for these things, man. They just happen. We have so many different ideas getting tossed around with Bob McKenzie's list, Kent Hughes in his own comments. Who are the Canadiens going to draft at home? Are they going to try to trade for second overall to get both of these guys? Who really knows? But this was an idea that was tossed around on Insider Trading yesterday by Pierre LeBrun that really prompted me to make yet another video about the entire thing because, man, we've talked about Montreal trading for second overall, getting both of these guys, choosing one of Slafkovsky or Wright over the other, Bob McKenzie's list, etc. But this idea is so different. It kind of has a feel of the 1999 draft, in my opinion. Now, the 1999 draft was the Henrik and Daniel Sedin draft, but the draft is interesting because none of those guys actually went first overall. That honor belongs to Patrick Stefan, noted NHL draft bust, who was taken by Atlanta. Now, Brian Burke, the Vancouver Canucks GM, had to move heaven and earth, trading for a whole bunch of draft picks throughout the day. He ended up having the first, second, third, and fourth overall picks at separate times in the 1999 draft. Eventually, after acquiring the first overall pick, Brian Burke traded from first overall to second overall, but he also attached a little clause to Atlanta to move up to number one. Hey, you're going to pick first overall, don't take a Sedin. If you can guarantee us that, we'll do the deal. You can go up to first, etc. Now, Pierre LeBrun is saying that the Montreal Canadiens might be in a position to think about something similar. LeBrun on Insider Trading says, there are many around the NHL who believe the Canadiens are waiting to see if the Devils pick up the phone before the first round gets underway to see what it would take to flip first and second to ensure that they get Slafkovsky. LeBrun feels that the Montreal Canadiens would be open to this idea. He also says the Canadiens are undecided on who they'll select first overall, which isn't out of the ordinary. However, he adds the Devils are telling people if the center is the best player available whenever they select, they will take the center even though they have Hischier and Hughes. And so this idea is kind of building off of the sentiment that we have seen from New Jersey Devils fans as to whether or not the Devils really even should take a center at their second overall spot. I mean, they have Jack Hughes, they have Nico Hischier, they have some great top-line caliber centers of the future already on their team. Do you really need to add a Logan Cooley who is going to be a center? Do you really need to add a Shane Wright if he's available, since he is going to be a center as well? However, they're going out there and saying, yeah, no, if the best player available is a center, we're just going to take him because you draft on BPA, not necessarily for need, right? But LeBrun is really insinuating in this initial idea here that the New Jersey Devils kind of want Slafkovsky more, due to positional constraints as well as the fact that Slafkovsky provides an element to this team that they don't have already, its size and that good combination of offensive prowess that he brings. We've discussed this idea many times before, but this is the first time we're actually insinuating the idea as to whether or not the Devils would trade up to get Slafkovsky and guarantee that he is going to come to their team. Now, the only reason you would even need to do this is if there is any contention with the Montreal side of things saying, hey, there is a 50-50 chance the Habs take Wright, there's a 50-50 chance the Habs take Slafkovsky. If the Devils really say, man, it would be better for us if Slafkovsky was the guy, sure, both of these players are so great, but if we had to choose, we would go with Slafkovsky because he adds a different element to this team. Hey, let's see if we can trade up with Montreal and take Slafkovsky first overall and guarantee that he will be our player. Could you see the Montreal Canadiens do this? Could you see the Montreal Canadiens trade down for Shane Wright? It sounds baloney when you say it like that, but contextually speaking, it makes a lot more sense. This is what NHL Watcher, the guy who posts all these tweets about what insiders say on the TV and all that, said about the entire situation. It's a theory that I actually like quite a lot. His theory is that the Habs want to take Shane Wright, but they're worried about the backlash if Slafkovsky ends up being the better player. So why not flip picks, get another asset, get the player they want, and let some other team deal with the pressure of, did they select the right guy first overall? This is indeed Gordon and Kent Hughes' first selection with the Habs, so it is a pretty big deal. This is some clarification on that same idea. Cabron-based Lifeform says, so the Devils want Slafkovsky and Montreal is considering blackmailing them to get some extra assets out of it? Am I understanding this right? I think that's what it implies. Yes. We've all seen what happened with Jesperi Kotkaniemi, right? The guy was drafted 3rd overall. He was drafted way too high. Sure, he's a serviceable NHL player, but probably somebody that shouldn't have gone as high as he did in 2018. And the Montreal Canadiens and Marc Bergevin are always going to have that little stain saying, man, you guys passed up on Hughes. You guys passed up on Zadina. You guys passed up on all these other players that are there and that became great. You passed up on talent and Kachuk. So now, a few years down the line, we still think about it that way, right? And for Hughes and Gorton, it's very easy to understand if that is absolutely the number one thing they want to avoid with this entire situation. We had spoken a few times in previous videos about how if you're drafting 3rd or 4th overall in this year's draft, you're golden because all you have to do is sit back, relax, and wait. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd overall picks will all get taken, and you don't have any control over that, leaving the next best player available to just fall into your lap, and you can just go out there and say, hey, okay, we'll take that guy because he's there. You don't have the pressure of being the team that makes the choice. And so for Montreal, because Slafkovsky versus Wright is a big deal, maybe they say, yeah, okay, well, if Slafkovsky ends up being the better player, then we don't want endless years of people saying we goofed up at 1st overall, right? Philadelphia is kind of handling that same sort of conversation with the 2nd overall pick in 2017 because they took Nolan Patrick over Heiskanen, Makar, and Elias Pettersson. So this is kind of an interesting idea. Plus, if you can actually leverage the situation to your advantage and get an extra pick, you could be making out like bandits while also getting Shane Wright, assuming New Jersey does indeed prefer Slafkovsky over Wright. Let's face it, if New Jersey is drafting 1st overall again after getting Hischier and Hughes, it's a lot more likely, I feel, that they do take Slafkovsky, especially when you consider what Pierre LeBrun is saying right here, that yeah, the belief here is that they would have no problem taking Wright, but they would prefer the other guy. And so when it comes down to an individual trade, okay, let's say it's 2nd overall and something for 1st overall. That something is going to be significant enough to the point where I feel like you kind of do have to think about it at the very least. Like, you don't see trades being done between picks this high unless the extra stuff on top is quite significant. If the Devils throw on a prospect like Shakir Mukhamadullin, for example, or, I don't know, some other forward they have in the system, or some other pick that they have in the draft, or maybe 2 mid-round picks next year, something like that, 2nd overall and X for 1st overall, I honestly would be on board with that idea if it means the Canadiens would still get Shane Wright, if you can guarantee that Slafkovsky goes to New Jersey. Now, I get it. You might say, okay, no, Kent Hughes is not going to want to do that because the draft is in Montreal. You're not going to go out there to the Habs hometown crowd and just trade away a 1st overall pick like that in front of your fans. That is a no-go. Maybe that is a very fair point to bring up, but at the end of the day, it's all optics, right? Like, if the Canadiens really want Shane Wright 1st overall, and they don't want to deal with the pressure of having the conversation as to whether or not they chose the right guy down the line, if you go down to 2nd and you still get the guy you want, you make out like bandits. That is just how it goes. So I don't know, man. Hopefully this is the last video we have to make about Slafkovsky versus Wright. Like, we didn't even talk about how these players are or whatever. We just kind of established they're both in that same territory of potentially being 1st overall picks. It's just now in July, it's July now, my gosh. In July of 2022, it's crazy to me thinking that the Montreal Canadiens, should this entire Pierre LeBrun thing actually come to fruition, would be trading down to get Shane Wright. That blows my mind. Talk in the comments if it blows your mind as well. Also, what do you think about this whole situation? I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99, and bye.